They denied me a seat at the ceremony until one email turned the tables. They didn't just forget to include me, they removed me on purpose. I stood in the lobby of the Grand Marriott Conference Center in Houston, holding the presentation folder I'd worked on for the last 7 months. Inside that folder was a strategy that had saved our company nearly $12 million last quarter. It was my strategy, my analysis, my late nights, my numbers. But at that moment, none of that mattered. Because when I tried to step inside the ballroom for our annual strategy summit, a man in a black suit stepped in front of me. "Your name's not on the list," he said flatly, tapping his iPad. "You're not allowed in." I blinked, confused. I thought maybe there had been a mix-up. I showed him my badge. "I'm Casey Monroe, Strategic Analyst Group A. I submitted the framework on A." He cut me off. "Ma'am, I have strict instructions. You're not authorized for entry. Please wait outside." The glass doors closed behind him. Through the clear panels, I could see the glowing chandeliers. Dozens of colleagues I'd worked beside for 3 years were finding their seats. I even spotted Claire, the intern, who had only joined a few weeks ago. She was seated right beside our VP. In her hands, a branded folder identical to mine. Except hers didn't contain her work. It was the moment I knew. They hadn't just overlooked me. They had decided I wasn't even worth a chair in the room I helped build. And here's the thing no one talks about. It's not the stolen credit that hurts the most. It's the silence, the ease with which people watch you vanish without a trace. If you've ever stood outside a door you helped open, only to be told you no longer belong, you'll understand exactly what I felt. If you've ever been left out of something you built from the ground up, leave a like. Let's keep going together because what happened next changed everything. My phone buzzed. I looked down to see an internal Slack message. "Claire, M. Ready to go live in 5. The team is so excited. Wish us luck." I didn't reply. Instead, I stepped away from the doors and walked down the long marble corridor past the bathrooms, past the glass elevators toward the small cafe tucked near the west exit. I sat down, opened my laptop, and logged into a private email account no one at my company knew about. I attached 3 files: a press release, 8 resignation letters including my own, an executive summary of a company called Stratcore Solutions LLC. I typed one sentence in the body of the email. "If you're going to take credit for my work, at least do it with your eyes open." I clicked send. Then I stood, zipped up my bag, and walked out into the Houston sun. What they didn't know was that their award ceremony was about to become the biggest PR disaster in the company's history. Not because I screamed, not because I begged, but because I'd been planning this moment for months. And all it took was one email. My name is Casey Monroe, and until that morning, I was the senior strategy analyst at Falcon Edge Technologies, one of the fastest-growing logistics intelligence firms in North America. If you'd told me 5 years ago that I'd someday walk away from a 6-figure job in downtown Houston, I would have laughed. Because back then, I believed in the system. I believed that hard work always rises, that intelligence matters, that if you solve the right problem, someone somewhere will notice. My parents raised me that way. My mom taught AP Calculus at a public high school for 30 years. My dad ran an auto repair shop where he gave free oil changes to single moms every Saturday. I grew up in Odessa, Texas, population humble and hardworking. We didn't talk about politics or office gossip. We talked about systems, logic, equations, integrity. That's why when I got my master's in data analytics and landed the role at Falcon Edge, I thought I'd found home. The company promised innovation, collaboration, a culture where ideas win. That's what their hiring slogan said. Ideas win. For a while it felt true. In my first year, I identified inefficiencies in their load distribution algorithm and rebuilt the model from scratch. That improvement alone saved the company $1.8 million in routing costs. I got a thank you email from my supervisor and a $50 Starbucks gift card. That same quarter, a senior manager who had restructured the presentation format got promoted to VP. I didn't complain. I told myself I was new, that maybe the timing wasn't right, that if I just kept delivering, kept showing up, the system would eventually reward me. So I pushed harder. I worked late, volunteered for holiday shifts, took over 3 accounts when a colleague left abruptly. I streamlined our reporting process, predicted 2 supply chain disruptions before they occurred, saving us from a potential client exodus. Still nothing changed, except I started noticing who got invited into certain rooms. It wasn't the smartest. It wasn't the most reliable. It was the ones who knew how to be seen. And I didn't play that game well. I hated small talk, hated politics. I was the girl who showed up early and left late, not the one clinking glasses at Friday happy hours. I thought performance would speak louder than polish. I was wrong. If you've ever felt invisible while doing everything right, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from right now. You're not alone. My shift in mindset came slowly. I remember one night sitting alone in the office at 10:15 p.m. scrolling through Slack while updating client forecast models. A message popped up in the main strategy channel. Logan. Huge shout out to Claire for the Q3 summary deck. Amazing clarity and visuals. Execs loved it. Claire had copied and pasted my charts. Every single graph I'd spent 2 weekends building. The only thing she added was her company logo at the top, and everyone was clapping. I didn't say a word. Just turned back to my screen and typed the final line in the report. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment I stopped believing in someday. I realized that in this place, ideas didn't win, visibility did. I also realized something else. If I ever wanted to be more than a ghost behind someone else's glory, I had to stop waiting to be chosen. I had to start choosing myself. The first time it happened, I told myself it was just a miscommunication. I had spent 2 weeks building a forecasting model that mapped supplier delays based on weather anomalies, international port congestion, and geopolitical disruption indicators. It wasn't flashy, but it was efficient, scarily accurate. It predicted delays with 87% precision, something our team had never achieved before. I emailed the full report to my department lead Logan and asked if I could present it at the Monday strategy meeting. He replied with a thumbs up emoji and a "let's review this together first." When Monday came, I was ready. I wore a navy blazer and brought printed handouts. But just before the meeting began, Logan pulled me aside. "We're tight on time," he said. "Mind if I walk them through the key takeaways? You can chime in after." I smiled. Sure, whatever works. But as he started presenting, I realized slide by slide that he wasn't just summarizing my findings. He was presenting them as his. He skipped the technical framework. He simplified my predictive triggers into buzzwords. He even made a joke about how data whisperers like me were the future, but didn't mention my name once. When the executives applauded, I forced a polite smile. Afterward, I approached him. "Hey, I said great job in there. Just curious. Did you mean to leave out my name?" Logan paused, raised an eyebrow, then shrugged. "I mean, technically the work was done during company hours using company data. We're all on the same team, right?" That's when it began. After that meeting, I started noticing patterns. I'd email a framework, I'd see it reworded in Claire's presentation. I'd file a report, it had become a bullet point in someone else's pitch deck. My work was everywhere, my name was nowhere. And still, I didn't speak up. Not really, because I'd been trained, whether by school, by culture, or just by watching, into believing that the moment I asked for credit, I'd look difficult. Not a team player, the kind of person who made others uncomfortable. So I played nice, smiled, stayed late, delivered more. And they took more. But the tipping point came 6 months before the conference. I had noticed discrepancies in how our company routed distribution centers in the Midwest. Our algorithms didn't account for storm season variability or long-haul driver shortages. It was a flaw that cost our top clients millions annually. So I spent weekends building a new model, a complete overhaul, integrated variables, AI-powered risk assessment, a predictive tool I was proud of. I practiced my pitch until 1 a.m. the night before the quarterly strategy review. But when I showed up, Logan stopped me at the door. "Casey, listen, there's not enough time for everyone. Give me your files, I'll incorporate what I can." I hesitated, but I was on the agenda. He looked me dead in the eye. "I make the agenda." And that's how my months of silent labor got reduced to 3 vague bullet points in a generic slide. 3 weeks later, Claire presented a new logistics framework to the board. My math, my model, my layout, repackaged under a sleek title and a rebranded logo. She got promoted the next day. And that's when I stopped being shocked. I stopped pretending I was naive. That night, I went home, opened a blank Google Doc, and typed one line at the top of the page. "This is the last time they steal from me." I didn't know exactly what I was building yet. But I knew this: I wasn't going to fight for a seat at someone else's table anymore. I was going to design a new one. For the first time in years, I stopped waiting for someone to notice. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every file I created, every draft, every presentation. I saved them in personal cloud folders with timestamps. I compiled Slack messages, version histories, meeting invites, anything that could establish a clear trail. I wasn't just preparing for a confrontation. I was preparing for a reckoning. It wasn't just about me anymore. One afternoon during a coffee run, I bumped into Erica, our former UX specialist. She'd left the company abruptly after a huge product launch. I'd always wondered why. Over a quick chat, she shared that the visual interface she spent 6 months building had been stripped from her portfolio. When she raised the issue, she was told her work belonged to the team. I reached out to others. Marcus from Client Insights. Same story. His retention model became the VP's personal strategy. Nina from Product Dev. Her patent proposal filed without her name. One by one, the same story unfolded, brilliance erased. It was never just an oversight. It was a system. So I started mapping it. I created a spreadsheet: name, contribution date, stolen by whom, what recognition, if any, was given. Patterns emerged. Names repeated. The same small circle of execs moved ideas like currency, trading them for promotions, praise, and power. And then came the moment I realized, if they built an empire on stolen blueprints, what would happen if those blueprints disappeared? I began quietly reaching out to those colleagues, not to vent, but to offer something different. A new start. It was around this time I first heard of Nova Ventures, a VC firm specializing in disruptive startups. I knew a friend of a friend who worked there. I booked a casual lunch under a fake consulting pretense. At that meeting, I unveiled my upgraded logistics model, the one Claire had butchered and watered down. This version was tighter, smarter, self-learning, real-time adjustment. The numbers were undeniable. Nova Ventures' senior partner leaned back in his chair. "This is worth something." "I know," I said. "But I'm not pitching a product. I'm pitching a movement." I showed him the spreadsheet, the names, the innovations, the people behind them. And I told him, "You want disruption? I've got 7 of the most underutilized minds in the industry ready to build something better if we're given a shot." He didn't respond right away. But 2 days later, I got a call. Nova Ventures was in. They wanted to fund our startup. Full backing. No interference. I hadn't even quit yet. If you've ever dreamed of walking away from a place that stole your spark, tell me this. What's stopping you? Drop it in the comments. I'll read every word. That weekend, I met the team at a rented co-working space under the name Stratcore Holding LLC. We signed NDAs, agreed on structure, and began designing the company we wished had existed. We didn't want ping-pong tables or beer fridges. We wanted a culture of credit, of clarity, of honoring work as sacred. I looked around at the table. Marcus, Nina, Erica, me. The misfits, the overachievers, the ghosts. And together, we were about to become a storm. With funding secured and a team assembled, Stratcore was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a reality. We refined our proprietary logistics framework relentlessly, each iteration more powerful and intuitive than the last. Unlike the old company, we built everything from the ground up with transparency and collaboration at the core. Our first clients were cautiously optimistic. They'd grown tired of empty promises and credit stolen by those in the upper echelons. When we demonstrated how our model cut delivery times by 18% and reduced costs by 23%, the excitement was palpable. Meanwhile, back at Falcon Edge, the atmosphere was shifting. Rumors swirled about the mysterious new startup drawing away key clients and talent. Internal meetings buzzed with concern. The board was starting to realize the silent exodus wasn't just a coincidence. The final straw came when Claire Once the Golden Child gave a presentation to executives that fell flat. Without the real insights behind it, the so-called new logistics framework she championed looked shallow and outdated. Questions arose. Doubts crept in. As Stratcor continued to gain traction, Falcon Edge scrambled to patch the cracks. But trust once broken is hard to rebuild. Our approach wasn't just innovative, it was ethical. People noticed. They shared our story quietly through word of mouth, and slowly our network grew. Late nights in our modest office were fueled by determination and a shared vision. We weren't just building software, we were building a culture where respect and recognition mattered as much as results. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Preston Walsh, the chairman of Falcon Edge's board. His tone was formal but tinged with urgency. "We need to discuss a potential resolution," he said. I listened, weighing my words carefully. I'd already made up my mind. There was no going back to a place where I was invisible. After the call, I sat quietly with my team. The road ahead was uncertain, but we were ready. Because this time, we were in control. If you've ever been overlooked or undervalued, know this: your worth isn't determined by others. It's defined by the courage to stand up and create your own path. If this resonates with you, share your story in the comments. Let's inspire each other to build something better. When Preston Walsh called me that afternoon, I had already made peace with one undeniable truth: I was done fighting for scraps on someone else's table. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of the boardroom, a subtle mix of authority and desperation. "Casey," he began, "we've reviewed the documentation you submitted. The evidence is compelling. However, the company must protect its interests. We would like to discuss terms that could bring this matter to an amicable resolution." I paused, feeling the tension tighten like a knot in my chest. Years of being dismissed, sidelined, and erased flashed through my mind. This wasn't about peace, it was about control. "Mr. Walsh," I replied steadily, "I appreciate your offer, but there's no resolution to be made with a culture that rewarded theft over talent. I have built something with people who respect each other's contributions. That's not something I'm willing to compromise." There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then, with a tone sharper than before, he warned, "If you proceed with this venture, be prepared for legal action. Breach of confidentiality, patent infringement. The board is prepared to use every resource at its disposal." I smiled a cold, knowing smile. Everything Stratcor has developed was created on personal time using personal resources. We have consulted with legal experts. Your claims won't hold up. The line went quiet again, this time longer. Finally, he said, "Are you threatening us?" "No, Mr. Walsh. I'm stating facts." I hung up the weight, lifting off my shoulders slightly. For years, I had let their threats and empty promises cage me. Now, standing firm, I was free. Over the following weeks, we doubled down. Our marketing pushed hard, unveiling Stratcor's cutting-edge framework to the logistics world. News outlets picked up the story, a group of former insiders shaking up the industry with transparency and innovation. Clients who had grown frustrated with Falcon Edge's opaque culture reached out in droves. Contracts flowed in. Investors grew excited. Meanwhile, Falcon Edge scrambled to mount a defense. Rumors of lawsuits circulated, but Stratcor's legal team was prepared. Each challenge was met with swift, calculated responses. One afternoon during a team meeting, Marcus, our lead data scientist, shared news that felt like a victory. "We just closed a deal with Navis Freight. They're shifting their entire supply chain strategy to Stratcor. That's their biggest client yet." Cheers erupted around the table. For the first time, the victories felt collective and genuine. But the fight wasn't over. 6 months after our launch, Falcon Edge's stock price had dropped 37%. Analysts speculated about leadership changes, and employee morale was at an all-time low. Then came a surprising call. Vincent, the vice president who once chased me through the parking garage, was on the line. "Casey, I'm here because the board wants to make a formal acquisition offer. They recognize the value of what you've built." I looked around at the team gathered in our cramped office. We had come too far to sell out now. I responded firmly, "Thank you, Vincent, but this isn't a negotiation. Stratcor isn't for sale." He hesitated, then confessed, "We've implemented new policies, mentorship programs, innovation recognition, fair compensation. Things that should have happened years ago." I nodded silently, knowing it was too little too late. That day, I realized that true power didn't come from fighting for a seat at someone else's table. It came from building your own, where respect and integrity were the foundation. If you're watching this now and feeling stuck in a place where your voice isn't heard, remember, you have the power to create something better. Share your thoughts below. I'm listening. The days that followed Vincent's call felt surreal. The man who once dismissed me as irrelevant was now pleading for my attention. But I wasn't the same person who had accepted being invisible, ignored, and stolen from. I had become something else, a woman who had built a company from the ground up with people who valued her vision and integrity. At Stratcor, every conversation mattered. Every idea was respected. Our modest office buzzed with the kind of energy I'd never experienced at Falcon Edge. Late nights were filled with laughter, brainstorming sessions, and a shared determination to change an industry that had long tolerated complacency and theft. One evening, as I reviewed the quarterly reports, Meredith, our operations specialist, walked in with a fresh cup of coffee. She smiled and said, "You know, I still remember the day Vincent chased you down the parking garage, begging you to stay. You looked calm, like you had already won." I laughed softly, remembering the chaos of that moment. It was true, I had felt victorious even then, because I wasn't just walking away from a company. I was walking toward my own destiny. Leo, our client relations expert, chimed in. "Honestly, it felt good to see them scramble for a change. But nothing feels better than knowing we're building this ourselves." I nodded. Exactly. It's not about revenge. It's about building a culture where people aren't afraid to show up and contribute. The work was intense. We fine-tuned our proprietary framework, daily incorporating client feedback and cutting-edge technology. Within months, Stratcor had signed contracts with over 20 major clients, including some of the largest shipping companies in the country. Media outlets began covering our rapid growth and innovative approach. We weren't just a startup anymore, we were becoming a movement. And with that came invitations to speak at conferences, industry panels, and networking events. One afternoon, an unexpected call came from the chairman of Falcon Edge's board. Preston Walsh, whose name had become synonymous with corporate power, requested a private meeting. His tone was polite but urgent. "I believe we need to talk, Casey," he said. "The documentation you provided has serious implications. We'd like to explore a resolution before this escalates further." I appreciated the offer but was firm. "Mr. Walsh, I'm not interested in patching up a broken system. I'm focused on building something that values its people." He sighed. "Our company has resources you can't imagine. If you continue down this path, we will take legal measures to protect our interests." I replied calmly, "All of Stratcor's work was developed independently outside company hours, with no use of proprietary information. Your legal team confirmed this 6 months ago." The line fell silent. Then came a warning: "We will ensure your startup never takes off." I smiled. "Good luck with that." That call marked a turning point. Falcon Edge's threats only strengthened our resolve. Our team doubled down, preparing for every challenge with strategic precision. And throughout it all, I never lost sight of why I started. If you're facing obstacles and feel like the system is against you, remember, it's your resilience and clarity of purpose that will carve your path forward. Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. Building Stratcore wasn't just about proving a point, it was about creating a space where innovation thrived because people were valued, not silenced. The energy in our office was contagious. Unlike the old environment I'd left behind here, every voice mattered, every idea had a chance, and every contribution was celebrated. Our first major breakthrough came unexpectedly. After months of refining our proprietary logistics framework, we secured a tentative agreement with Navis Freight, one of the largest shipping companies in the Midwest. This client was pivotal. If we could win them over, it would signal our legitimacy in the industry. The day I presented to their executive team felt like a test of everything we had built. I stood in a sleek conference room overlooking the Houston skyline, heart-pounding yet steady. As I walked through our data-driven insights, predictive models, and the transparent system we designed, I could see heads nodding, eyes lighting up. When the presentation ended, the lead executive smiled and said, "Casey, this is exactly the kind of innovation we've been waiting for." It was the first of many validations. Word spread quickly, and soon several major clients began exploring partnerships with Stratcore. The momentum was real. Our calendar filled with meetings, demos, and contract negotiations. Back at Falcon Edge, the atmosphere grew tense. Stock prices dropped 30% over 6 months. Industry analysts questioned their ability to maintain market share amid this new competition. Internal emails leaked about leadership struggles and calls to address the talent drain. One evening, as I gathered with my team to celebrate our first profitable quarter, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. "Casey, this is Preston Walsh," said the voice of Falcon Edge's board chairman. "I think it's time we talked seriously." I took a deep breath. "I'm listening." He spoke candidly about the implications of our work, the legal risks, and even extended an invitation for a private meeting to discuss potential acquisition. I thanked him but remained firm. "I've built something I believe in with people who believe in each other. That's not for sale." As I hung up, I looked around at the team gathered in our open-plan office, faces filled with determination and hope. This was just the beginning. Through the months that followed, Stratcore expanded beyond expectations. We added talented professionals who had once felt invisible in their old workplaces. Our culture emphasized respect, creativity, and shared success. Innovation was no longer a privilege, but a right. I found myself invited to speak at industry conferences, once as the overlooked analyst, now as a keynote speaker, inspiring others to claim their worth. Standing on that stage, I began with words I never thought I'd say. "You're not on the list." A murmur ran through the audience. Then I smiled and continued. "But sometimes being excluded is the push you need to build your own table. If you've ever been sidelined or dismissed, remember your story isn't over. Share where you are watching from in the comments, and let's keep lifting each other up." I remember the first time I heard about Claire's rise. It was a Tuesday morning, and the news had spread through the office like wildfire. She had been promoted to senior strategy manager less than 6 months after she started. Everyone was congratulating her, praising her fresh ideas and charismatic leadership. What no one said out loud was that those ideas were mine. I sat at my desk trying to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to the countless hours I had poured into the logistics framework she now claimed as her own. It was the same feeling I'd experienced countless times before, a mix of frustration, helplessness, and a burning desire to be seen. But instead of giving up, I decided to channel that energy into something more productive. I began quietly building a network within the company, connecting with others who had felt overlooked or undervalued. These were the people who had innovative ideas but lacked the recognition, the credit, or the support to bring them to life. We started meeting after work, sharing stories and strategies. It became clear that the problem wasn't isolated to me or Claire. It was systemic. A culture that rewarded political savvy over genuine contribution. A culture that stifled creativity and rewarded conformity. One night, as we sat in a small conference room brainstorming, I realized that if we wanted change, we couldn't wait for permission. We had to create our own path. With that resolve, I reached out to a venture capital firm known for backing disruptive startups. I presented them not just with my upgraded logistics model, but with a vision of a company where innovation was nurtured and recognition was fair. I introduced them to the talented group of professionals I'd connected with, each with their own stories of being undervalued and overlooked. Their response was overwhelming. They saw not just a business opportunity, but a chance to reshape an industry. The funding came through faster than I expected, and within weeks, Stratcore was born. Launching a startup while still employed at Falcon Edge was risky, but I was driven by a purpose bigger than fear. I spent nights refining our platform, negotiating with potential clients, and assembling a team committed to a new way of doing business. Meanwhile, Claire continued to present our work as her own, unaware that the woman she had overshadowed was about to redefine the rules of the game. If you've ever felt invisible in your workplace, if you've ever had your ideas stolen or your efforts ignored, know this: you're not alone. And sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation, it's creation. If this story speaks to you, please leave a comment below sharing your experience. Let's build a community that uplifts and empowers. The day of the big conference arrived and the tension was palpable. I dressed carefully, choosing a tailored charcoal suit that projected confidence without arrogance. Walking into the venue, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. This wasn't just any presentation, it was the moment I would unveil everything we had built in the shadows. As I stepped onto the stage, I caught sight of familiar faces in the audience, some former colleagues from Falcon Edge, including Claire and Logan. Their eyes flickered with surprise, and I could tell a touch of apprehension. They hadn't expected me to be here leading a company that was quickly becoming the talk of the industry. I began my presentation with the core of Stratcore's logistics framework, highlighting its innovation's real-world impact and the collaborative culture behind it. The data spoke for itself: a 25% reduction in delivery times, a 30% decrease in operational costs for clients, and an adaptive system that learned and improved with every shipment. But it wasn't just the numbers that resonated. I shared our story, the story of a group of undervalued professionals who refused to be silenced. I spoke about the importance of recognition, respect, and integrity in the workplace. The audience listened intently, some nodding, others visibly moved. After the presentation, during the Q&A session, a senior industry leader asked, "What advice would you give to those who feel overlooked or undervalued in their careers?" I smiled and replied, "Don't wait for permission to shine. Sometimes you have to create your own stage, build your own table, and surround yourself with people who lift you up, not hold you down." Backstage, I received messages from attendees praising the authenticity and passion behind Stratcore. It was a far cry from the silence and invisibility I had endured for years. Later that evening, I received an email from Claire. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." In the message, she explained that she had been told our work was collaborative and that she had never intended to take sole credit. She expressed regret for her role in overshadowing me. I read her words but didn't respond. Because this wasn't about blame anymore. It was about moving forward. Over the next few months, Stratcore continued to grow, securing contracts with major players and expanding our team. We cultivated a culture where ideas were celebrated and contributions were acknowledged. Our success wasn't just in profits, but in creating a workplace where everyone felt valued. If you're watching this and have ever felt like your efforts go unnoticed, remember, your value isn't defined by others. It's defined by your courage to stand up, to innovate, and to build something meaningful. Share your story in the comments. Let's inspire each other to create change. Months into our journey with Stratcore, the magnitude of what we had built began to crystallize. The echoes of the past moments of invisibility, stolen credit, and quiet frustration were gradually replaced by the vibrant energy of a company fueled by collaboration and respect. I remember the day Vincent, the vice president from Falcon Edge, came to our office unannounced. His usually composed demeanor was replaced by a visible weariness. As he stepped inside, he hesitated before speaking. "Casey, I need to apologize." He began, his voice softer than I expected. "The company made many mistakes I was a part of. But we've changed. We've started programs to recognize innovation properly. We want you back this time as Chief Innovation Officer." I looked around at my team, the brilliant minds who had put their faith in me, the ones who believed in building a fair and ethical workplace. I realized then that returning to that old world was not an option. "I appreciate the offer," I replied firmly, "but I've built something here that goes beyond titles and positions. I'm not interested in returning to a place where respect was optional." The conversation ended amicably, but I knew my path was clear. At Stratcore, we were not just creating innovative logistics solutions. We were crafting a culture that valued each voice, rewarded genuine effort, and embraced transparency. Our growth was steady but impactful. Clients appreciated the integrity we brought to the table. Employees thrived in an environment that fostered creativity without fear. The media began to take notice. I was invited to share our story on podcasts and at industry conferences. The narrative was clear: a group of overlooked professionals dared to reclaim their power, and in doing so reshaped an entire sector. One evening, as I sat in our conference room reflecting on the journey, Meredith, our operations specialist, joined me. "You've changed a lot, Casey," she said quietly. "You went from being invisible to leading a revolution." I smiled, thinking of the countless nights I had doubted myself. "This isn't just my story," I said. "It's ours. And it's far from over." If you're feeling unseen or undervalued in your career, know this: your potential is limitless when you choose to own your narrative. I'd love to hear where you're watching from and your own stories of resilience. Drop a comment below, and let's build this community together. The buzz around Stratcore's rise was undeniable. Every day brought new opportunities, new challenges, and new faces eager to join our mission. We were no longer just a startup. We had become a symbol of change in a stagnant industry. One afternoon, as I prepared for a client pitch in our modest conference room, I reflected on how far we had come. From the outside, it might have looked like overnight success, but the reality was years of silent struggle, careful planning, and relentless determination. The pitch went well. Our innovative approach, combined with our commitment to transparency and respect, resonated deeply with the clients. We secured a major contract with Horizon Freight, a key player that had once been skeptical about leaving Falcon Edge. Meanwhile, Falcon Edge's struggles intensified. Leadership changes and internal turmoil became the headlines in trade magazines. Our disruption was real, and it was making waves. But success didn't come without its own set of pressures. Scaling rapidly meant making tough decisions, managing growing teams, and staying true to our core values amidst the noise. During a late-night strategy session, Leo turned to me and said, "It's amazing how much we've accomplished, but it feels like we're just getting started." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the thrill of possibility. Our culture remained our strongest asset. We held regular forums where every employee, regardless of title, could voice ideas and concerns. This openness fostered innovation and built trust, two elements often missing in my previous experiences. One day, I received a handwritten note from a junior analyst who had joined Stratcore 6 months prior. She wrote about how being valued changed her perspective on work and life, how she finally felt empowered to contribute authentically. Moments like that reminded me why this journey mattered. If you've ever been part of a team where your voice wasn't heard, or if you're struggling to find your place, know that change is possible. Share your experiences below. I want to hear your story. As Stratcor prepared for its first anniversary, I found myself reflecting not just on business milestones, but on personal growth. The transformation from overlooked analyst to industry leader was not just about career, it was about reclaiming my worth and inspiring others to do the same. Our story was far from typical, but it was real. It was proof that sometimes the greatest setbacks pave the way for the most powerful comebacks. Nearly a year after Stratcor's founding, the industry was abuzz with news of our success. We had grown from a small group of misfits to a formidable force in logistics innovation. Yet despite the accolades and rapid expansion, I never lost sight of why we started. One evening, I found myself preparing for a keynote speech at the National Logistics Summit, the largest event in the sector. The invitation felt surreal, considering just months earlier I was barred from the very conference where I would now stand as a featured speaker. As I rehearsed my opening lines, memories flooded back: the dismissals, the stolen credit, the countless times I was told to wait outside. But now those moments were my fuel, my proof that change was possible. The night of the summit, I walked onto the stage to a packed auditorium. The spotlight felt warm, the room buzzing with anticipation. I began, "You're not on the list." A hush fell over the audience. Those words, once a barrier, were now a bridge, a shared experience of exclusion that many had faced but few dared to speak about. I told my story not as a tale of victimhood, but as a testament to resilience and empowerment. I spoke about the power of owning your narrative, of building your own table when denied a seat at others. Faces in the crowd reflected a spectrum of emotions. Some nodded knowingly, others wiped away tears. The energy was electric. After the speech, I was approached by former colleagues, industry veterans, and young professionals inspired by our journey. Many shared their own stories of being overlooked, underestimated, or marginalized. It was clear that our story resonated beyond Stratcor; it spoke to a universal experience. That night, as I reflected on the journey from that cold conference room where I was turned away to this moment of recognition, I realized the true victory wasn't in the success of Stratcor alone. It was in the community we had built, the hope we had ignited. If you've ever felt excluded or invisible, know that your voice matters. Share your story in the comments below. Together, we can create a world where everyone's contribution is celebrated. In the months following my keynote, Stratcor's momentum only grew stronger. Our team expanded, welcoming talented individuals who shared our vision of innovation rooted in integrity. Every new hire brought fresh ideas, but more importantly, they brought a commitment to fostering a culture where respect was non-negotiable. Yet with growth came challenges. Scaling a startup in a highly competitive industry tested our resilience. Managing client expectations, balancing rapid development, and navigating market fluctuations required more than just technical expertise. It demanded empathy, patience, and unwavering leadership. One afternoon during a particularly intense planning session, I found myself reflecting on the journey. From the first time I was told "you're not on the list," to leading this team, the path had been anything but straightforward. I thought about the countless professionals still trapped in environments where their contributions went unnoticed, where politics overshadowed performance, and where silence was often mistaken for consent. That realization deepened my resolve. Stratcor wasn't just a business, it was a beacon. A promise that workplaces could be different, that dignity and recognition could be foundational, not optional. We began launching mentorship programs, internal innovation challenges, and open forums to ensure every voice was heard. Our success wasn't measured solely by profit margins, but by the happiness and growth of our people. Clients noticed the difference. They valued not only our cutting-edge logistics solutions, but also our ethical approach. Testimonials poured in about how working with Stratcor felt like partnering with a team that genuinely cared. Amidst all this, I received an unexpected message from Claire. This time, it wasn't an apology. It was an invitation to collaborate on an industry-wide initiative focused on ethical innovation. I paused before replying, recognizing that while she had been a symbol of the system I fought against, perhaps there was room for healing and progress. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that change begins with courage, not just to stand up for yourself, but to extend a hand toward transformation. If you've ever wrestled with forgiveness or rebuilding trust, share your thoughts below. Let's explore how we can grow stronger together. 3 years have passed since I first stood outside that conference room, excluded and dismissed. Looking back, it's almost hard to believe how far we've come. Stratcor is now a leader in logistics technology, employing over 100 people across multiple states, and our solutions are helping companies save millions every year. But beyond the numbers, what fills me with the most pride is the culture we've cultivated, one where every individual feels seen, heard, and valued. The conversations I have with employees often touch on how different it feels to work here, how trust and respect foster creativity and drive. Of course, the journey hasn't been without its struggles. Scaling a company means facing new challenges, from managing rapid growth to balancing innovation with operational demands. But with every obstacle, our team's commitment to our core values has remained unwavering. On a personal level, I've grown in ways I never imagined. The quiet analyst who once accepted being invisible has become a leader who champions not just strategy, but the people behind it. I've learned that leadership is not about titles or authority, but about empowering others to bring their best selves forward. I often receive messages from young professionals who feel trapped in toxic environments, wondering if change is possible. To them, I say this: your worth is not defined by how others treat you, but by your courage to seek or create environments where you can thrive. If my story has inspired you, I encourage you to take that first step, whether it's speaking up, finding allies, or building your own table. The path isn't easy, but it's worth it. Before I close, I want to leave you with one thought that has guided me. The most powerful seat isn't the one others reserve for you. It's the one you build with your own hands. If you believe in creating a workplace where everyone's voice matters, if you're ready to take control of your story, please share your thoughts below. Let's continue this journey together. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing in the power of resilience and authenticity. Looking back on everything, I realize this story is not just about me or Stratcor. It's about the countless people who have been overlooked, undervalued, and unheard in their workplaces. It's about the courage it takes to step away from a system that doesn't honor your worth and to create something new, a space where your contributions matter, where respect is the foundation, and where innovation flourishes because people feel safe to share. I want you to know that no matter how invisible you feel right now, your voice matters. The journey to reclaim your power is rarely easy. It demands resilience, patience, and the willingness to believe in yourself even when others don't. But it's a journey worth taking. Creating your own table, your own space of respect and recognition, means refusing to accept the limits others place on you. It means building a community of people who see your true value and who will lift you higher rather than hold you back. This story is a testament to what's possible when you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. When you stop asking for permission and start claiming your right to be seen. If you've ever been excluded, erased, or dismissed, I invite you to use that experience as a catalyst. Share your story, find your allies, and build your own path forward. The power to change your narrative lies within you. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story touched you, consider subscribing to this channel and joining a community where we uplift and empower each other. Together, we can rewrite the rules and build workplaces and lives that honor who we truly are. Remember, the most powerful seat isn't the one others save for you. It's the one you build yourself.